What's good, y'all? Elite Live Streams. We back with another one. How you guys doing out there? Welcome to another live stream. It's your boy Brandon B. You know I had to come back. It's Black History Month, so you know we got to make sure that we stand in the actual factuals about Black history. We're going to talk about today a very, very historical event that happened in Black American history. We're going to be talking about Robert F. Williams. We're going to be talking about how he stood up to the KKK, the huge event that this happened. And I thought it was something very important to add to this series. Like I said, it's Black History Month. So what I'm going to try to do every day in Black History Month is try to talk about a historical Black event that happened in foundational Black American history. I'm going to make sure that we bring that to you guys every single day for the month of February. I'm going to try my best, of course. So you guys, please bear with me. But that's what we're doing over here. We're bringing the real, actual stories. We're going to be having some fun with this. I'm going to be doing this kind of a new format. So I'm really excited to kind of try this today and, you know, give it a shot. You know what I'm saying? Because I think it's very important to always have, you know, some new formats and new ways to be able to have fun with this. Because I see, you know, so many content creators right now, you know, they're caught up in the day-to-day talks and not necessarily using what this month is for. And this is for Black History Month. So every single day of Black History Month, I'm going to be talking about Black history, historical figures from our community, and as well, the impact that they've made. So without a further ado, we're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about that today. And I'm really, really thankful for everybody who's been pulling up. Salute to all of the new subscribers. We just hit 650. I can't believe this, man. Honestly, y'all, like, we are over 650 across my platforms when we come to Facebook, and we come to as well when we're actually thinking about the numbers on YouTube, right? And it's been great, man, just to kind of see the growth. It's been great for, you know, just to see so many people who are interested in what we have to say here at Elite Media. And I couldn't be more thankful for all of you guys who show love and who always come through to support. You feel me? So thank you all so much. The channel's growing and I couldn't be more happy about that. So thank you all. So let's talk about it, right? Robert F. Williams. Who was this guy, Robert F. Williams? We're going to talk about him. We're going to do a little bit of, you know, early life. And then we're going to watch a video that talks about this specific incident when he completely humiliated the KKK, right? So let's have some fun. Let's talk about this. Let me bring it up for you guys right here, man, so we can get into this. You know what I'm saying? Have some fun. You know what I'm saying? We're going to do what we do over here at Elite Media. So boom, there we go. Mr. Robert K. Williams, right? So let's talk about Mr. Robert K. Williams, okay? So who was Robert K. Williams, right? Let's talk about that, man, because I know you guys are wondering who this guy was. Well, Robert K. Williams, or Robert F. Williams, Robert Franklin Williams, was born in Monroe, North Carolina on February 26, 1925 to Emma Carter and John L. Williams, who worked as railroad oil washers. He had two sisters, Lorraine Garlington and Jesse Link, and two brothers, John H. Williams and Edward S. Williams. His grandmother, a former slave of Yoruba ancestry, gave Williams his grandfather's rifle. His grandfather had been a Republican campaigner and a publisher of the newspaper The People's Voice during the hard years after the Reconstruction in North Carolina. At the age of 11, Williams witnessed the beating and dragging of a Black woman by the police, James Helms Sr. Helms Sr. later became the Monroe Chief of Police, was the father of future United States Senator Jesse Helms, right? So look at that, guys. So as you can see, at a very young age, Robert already was witnessing the police brutality that was going on right there in Monroe, North Carolina. He had a very, very direct connection as well to the activism in that city, being that his grandfather was a publishing author and as well an activist and Republican in their community, right? So a lot of times when you look at people who were a part of the resistance against white supremacy and as well against these institutions like the KKK, you always saw a history where they were fighting against the police that were maybe local to their towns, local to their states, and they always had a vendetta against a specific type of family, right? And so that's why it's always important when you see kind of these scenarios where you can see a man like Robert F. Williams and his family living in these specific towns, and they already have a target on their back because of their family's activism and their work in that town, right? So you can already see kind of how they feel towards Robert pretty early on in his life, being that the police chief was actually somebody who he witnessed murder someone in the middle of the street, right? So you already have kind of that playing out, right? You already got that in the background, right? So let's continue, okay? Let's continue. So, as a young man, Williams joined the Great Migration, traveling north for industrial work during World War II. He worked in factories in Detroit. He witnessed the 1943 Detroit race riot that prompted by labor competition between white and Black Americans, right? So look, here's the thing sometimes that we talk about, especially as Black Americans and especially as we start to move into more of the details about the tangibles that Black Americans talk about. And we always talk about how the workforce was basically split down the middle against Black Americans and everybody else. And it started with who? The white Americans. And that's why we always say that we can uniquely, uniquely identify when specific organizations or specific management is doing what, when they are, shifting their focus towards a different specific group, or if they're bringing somebody in so that they can have priority to be competition towards the Black Americans who are a part of that organization, who are working in that specific organization. And that's why a lot of times as Black Americans, we talk about this, right? We always kind of make it a thing for ourselves to make it clear that the things that we fought for and the things that we are looking for have a lot to do with experiences that our ancestors had already paved the way for. Like I just mentioned, the 1943 Detroit riots, right? Race riots based on what? Competition between the white and the Black Americans who are working there, right? So he was drafted in 1944 and served for a year and a half as a private in the segregated Marines before returning home to Monroe, right? In 1947, Williams married his African-American wife, or Black American wife, as we like to call it now, woman named Mabel Ola Robinson, a fellow civil rights activist, and the two had 2 children, all right? So we already can make our great assessment here that Robert had a very, very extensive history and that he had a very, very direct connection to the activism and the civil rights that were going on right there in Monroe, North Carolina. He also had a very strict history behind his grandfather, right? Being a part of a publication that directly spoke out against the police brutality that was going on in their cities, right? So you already can see now a pattern here where he started to grow in the civil rights movement and he started to become what a lot of people would fear, right? And so that's kind of where things start, right? It's pretty interesting because, they like to, kind of leave certain things out. And that's why I wanted to make sure I started right here with giving him his just due, making sure that we speak correctly on who he was, where his family was, what his lineage is, and as well how that went into the activism and the civil rights that he specifically practiced, right? So let's continue, right? Williams returned to Monroe, North Carolina, and became the president of the Union County NAACP chapter in 1951. He wanted to change the segregated town to protect the civil rights of Black Americans. First, they worked to integrate the public library. After that success, in 1957, Williams also led efforts to integrate the public swimming pools, which were funded and operated by tax-paying monies. He had followers form picket lines around the pool. The NAACP members organized peaceful demonstrations, but opponents fired on their lines. No one was arrested or punished, although law enforcement were public. So look, this is what would happen all the time, right? They already talked about, they opened fire on the picket lines and no one was prosecuted or arrested for that heinous crime on these Black Americans who were trying to integrate in Monroe, North Carolina at this time, right? So you already can see now a pattern here, right? We start to see a pattern where we always talk about, as Black Americans, us uniquely understanding how it works when it comes to activism, civil rights, and protest. We can already speak to how things will happen, how things get escalated, and how if there's a police presence, how one specific group is treated in comparison to us as foundational Black Americans. And us being uniquely able to understand this is why a lot of us right now, as we see what's going on with the ICE protests, have found our seats. We are sitting back and we're staying out of these type of things because we understand what aggression will come behind that. We've already seen this. It's very uniquely, built within the Black American community. So for us, obviously, we already know what we're talking about. And as you can see here, Robert F. Williams dealt with that all the way back in 1951, okay? 1951, this stuff was going on, all right? So let me continue here. So at that time, Monroe had a large Ku Klux Klan chapter. The press estimated it had about 7,500 members, while the city had a total of 12,000 residents. Okay, guys? So think about that. The city of Monroe itself only had 12,000 members. 7,500 of those were Ku Klux Klan members, holding members. Okay, so think about the odds of that being that much of a minority within a community that the majority is KKK members. This is just insane. Like sometimes the stuff that you find out, through going through the history is just pretty crazy, man. And so now, right now you have a city where you have this, right? You have an overwhelming amount of Ku Klux Klan members, right? And so that's where he started the Black Armed Guard, right? That's where he started the Black Armed Guard to protect against these types of people who were there during this time, right? So he says, alarmed at the threat to civil rights activists, Williams had applied to the National Rifle Association, the NRA, for a chapter for a local rifle club. He called the Monroe chapter of the NRA the Black Armed Guard. It was made up of about 50 to 60 men, including some men who were veterans like him. They were determined to defend the local Black American community from racist attacks, a goal similar to that of the Deacons of Defense, who established chapters in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama from 1964 to 1965, right? Newton was the Black residential area of Monroe. In the summer of 1957, there were rumors that the KKK was going to attack the house of Dr. Albert E. Perry, a practicing physician and vice president of the Monroe NAACP. Williams and his men of the armed guard went to Perry's house to defend it, fortifying it with sandbags. When numerous KKK members appeared and shot from their cars, Williams and his followers returned fire, driving them away. After the clash, the same city officials who said the Klan had a constitutional right to organize and met an emergency session and passed a city ordinance banning the Klan from Monroe without a special permit per the police chief. All right, so as you guys can see, during these times, there was a lot of infrastructure that was protecting the KKK because, like I just mentioned, when you already had 12,000 members in a city of Monroe, 7,500 of those 12,000 were KKK members. So just imagine that overwhelming amount of people, right? Just insane, guys. Just look at this. Like, it's crazy to think that this was the reality, right? This was the reality when you had over 12,000, only 12,000 people were in Monroe, and 7,500 of those 12,000 was this right here, the Ku Klux Klan. And it's crazy to think that this was a part of something that we had to live under as foundational Black Americans. At this time, we couldn't even go outside because you could imagine if the majority of the city is Ku Klux Klan members, right? That's an overwhelming amount. What would you think it would be safe for foundational Black Americans to go anywhere when you have that threat imminent, right? So let's go in, right? Let's now watch. I got a little video here for you guys. I thought it was good for me to set the stage, right? Now we can, you know what I'm saying, get into a little bit of the video, right? So let me go ahead and make sure everything is set up here correctly. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Let me go there. Let me full screen that out. And then we will go here. Bam. All right. Sweet. So now let's watch this together. You feel me? This is a video that I came across, and it has the same title, Black Soldiers Who Humiliated the KKK. Let's get into it.
North Carolina, led by the town's own police chief. Their target, a brick house where Marine Corps veteran Robert F. Williams and a group of Black World War II soldiers waited. The Klan had terrorized this neighborhood for months, but tonight, Black men would shoot back. Monroe, North Carolina sat 30 miles southeast of Charlotte, a small textile town of 12,000 people where cotton mills provided jobs and Jim Crow provided the rules.
So like we said, only 12,000 people were in Monroe, okay? And of those 12,000, there were 7,500 holding KKK members, okay? So just think about the insanity of that, right?
Railroad tracks divided white from black, prosperity from poverty, safety from terror. On one side lived the people who ran the town. On the other lived the people who kept it running, cooking in white kitchens, cleaning white homes, working white-owned factories for a fraction of white wages. Robert Franklin Williams arrived back in Monroe in 1955, though calling it an arrival suggests he'd been welcome somewhere else. Born in this town on February 26, 1925, he'd grown up hearing stories from his grandmother, a former slave who'd given him his grandfather's rifle and told him what it meant to survive in a place that wanted you dead. His grandfather had been a Republican organizer during Reconstruction, publishing a newspaper called The People's Voice, until white violence made him choose between his voice and his life. He chose life, but kept the rifle.
All right, so listen, this is what, sometimes we talk about here is the fact that there were a specific faction of Black Americans who did not have any reservations about protecting themselves against the white Americans and against the racist white Americans. A lot of them, like he spoke of, had a lot of military training. They had a lot of very, very great marksmanship. And so they were not afraid to have to arm themselves against any threat, whether it be foreign or domestic, right? A lot of these soldiers who came back from the war, came back during Jim Crow and still had to deal with a lot of these races, they came back with a lot of skills that a lot of these specific country bumpkins did not have. So they had no fear when it came to having to defend themselves against these guys. It was, you know, they were already handicapped. They knew that they would do whatever it took to get the job done. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you need. You know, you need that type of energy to match against their own, you know, overwhelming numbers and specific brutality that you already know white Americans were capable of at this time.
Williams knew Monroe's particular brand of hatred intimately. When he was 11 years old, he'd watched police officer Jesse Helms Sr., father of the future senator, drag a black woman bleeding through the streets by her hair after administering what the officer called an arrest. The woman's screams echoed in Williams' head for years. The sight of that badge glinting in the sun, while white onlookers smiled and nodded, taught young Robert a lesson that no school would ever address.
All right, so listen, this was a pivotal part, like I mentioned earlier. The pivotal part is a lot of these demonstrations that will happen to a lot of young foundational Black American children during these very, very brutal police brutality issues. It was imprinted on them as they got older to be able to fight and use their skills against white supremacy and be able to not only attack it in a certain way, but understand what they were up against as Black Americans. It was crazy because this is something that we always talk about here, is the fact that when Black Americans speak about police brutality, it is something that we have dealt with for generations. It's not something that we're just talking about overnight and just happened overnight. This is something that we have a unique history of understanding it. And so over time, it has been one of those things where we have always spoke out against it because it's been happening since the inception of a police department, since a police was even invented. All right. That was the point. The point of the police department was to brutalize and to terrorize Black American communities. That was the only reason why the police were created. And so naturally, we had a lot of, like I said, veterans who came back with specific skills and military training, who were not afraid to stand up against these types of people because they had saw it since they were children. Robert talked about this. He saw it since he was a child. His first real understanding of police brutality was watching a woman get murdered in the street. Okay? So that's what we talk about as Black Americans, how uniquely we understand this, because it's been happening to us for so long. We know our enemy.
The law in Monroe wasn't there to protect him. It was there to remind him of his place. He'd tried to escape that place. During World War II, Williams migrated north like hundreds of thousands of other Black Southerners, finding work in Detroit's auto factories. He was there in 1943 when white mobs stormed through Black neighborhoods, killing dozens. He fought back then, young and angry, learning that Northern freedom was just Southern oppression with better lighting.
All right, so look, it's very unique that they talk about this, but this is something as well that if you watch the movie Sinners, they talk about that too, is what, that it don't matter whether you in the South or whether you up in the North, the racism is still going to be racism, regardless of where you go. And that was something that a lot of Black Americans started to realize when they did the Great Migration going north, right? A lot of them realized that, hey, it didn't matter where we was, they were still going to treat us like we were less than. And that's why a lot of the civil rights movements were not only happening just in the South, but it was also happening up north as well. This was something that collectively foundational Black Americans had to deal with. They had to collectively deal with the fact that, hey, man, no matter where we go, racism and racist people will follow, no matter if we're north or south, right? And that was something that was a very, very hard fact for them to have to realize, but it was something that a lot of foundational Black Americans had to come to terms with because it was the truth. You know what I'm saying?
1944, he was drafted into the army, serving until 1946. Then he joined the Marines, 1954 to 1955, where he learned discipline, marksmanship, and the bitter irony of defending a country that wouldn't defend him. When he returned to Monroe in 1955, he found the local National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter gasping its last breath.
All right, so this is when he's talking about him joining the NAACP in Monroe, right? And this was after he got back from the war. And I mentioned this, a lot of our veterans, right? A lot of our veterans, specifically my grandfather, his generation, a lot of them, when they came back from World War II, there was a lot of stuff that they had to deal with still right here after they defended our country. Okay, they were still treated less than, they were still not respected for their uniforms. Some of them having to take off their uniforms to go into restaurants. Okay, so it's crazy sometimes that when I try to express the fact that history is very important and the fact that I will always make sure that I speak on the history, because I see a lot of people, man, a lot of people sensationalizing these conversations, but it's important for me to make sure that we keep it on code and help you guys understand the history. I'm not finna let y'all just talk about foundational Black Americans without us talking about the history, without us having factuals to speak on and to point at, and for us to be able to look at a specific scenario and say, all right, this is why foundational Black Americans are saying this. This is why foundational Black Americans feel the way that they feel. Yes, because I'm bringing you guys a specific facts and breaking it down for you guys right here on my channel, right? I'm telling you guys, a lot of other channels, they're not doing this, man. A lot of the other channels, they just get on here and talk about the same trending topics. I'll be on here risking views because I'm going to use Black History Month to talk about Black history. Isn't that what a crazy concept? A foundational Black American during Black history is talking about Black history. Yeah, this shouldn't be a crazy concept. This should be every single channel who is speaking about foundational Black Americans should be talking about foundational Black American history this whole month. It should be overwhelming. Everybody should be on the same code. But you know me, man, I got to do what I got to do. You feel me? I got to represent. So let's continue to talk about my brother and ancestor, Robert F. Williams, who was riding on the KKK.
6 members remained from what had once been a thriving organization. The others had been fired from jobs, threatened, beaten, driven out. Southern states were systematically destroying the NAACP, branding it communist, outlawing it where they could.
All right, so I love this part, right? So now you guys can understand that this has been happening for a long time. Anytime Black Americans collectively join together to support a specific movement, what do? They always brand it as something that is negative. Now we're starting to see, are you guys noticing it as well? Every foundational Black American topic, everyone's trying to call us an extremist group. They're trying to call us that we are xenophobic, that we are hateful towards other groups. Have you guys noticed that propaganda? That is what they do when they see a specific group of foundational Black Americans collectively working together to push forward their narrative, to change the narrative. What do? They go out of their way and work double time with who? The government entities to discredit and try their best to take away the credibility that we're building right here. That's what they've been doing for the longest time. Listen to this.
To Monroe in 1955, he found the local National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter gasping its last breath. 6 members remained from what had once been a thriving organization. The others had been fired from jobs, threatened, beaten, driven out. Southern states were systematically destroying the NAACP,
right?
branding it communist, outlawing it where they could. In Monroe, simply attending a meeting could cost you everything.
All right. So listen, guys, this is what happens. Anytime there is a collective movement that Black Americans are a part of, there will constantly be infiltration. There will constantly be threats. There will constantly be people trying to dismantle the structure that foundational Black Americans are trying to build amongst each other. This has been happening since we were put into captivity, guys. And that's why it's so important to always point it out, right? We're seeing it right now, how they are trying their best to infiltrate foundational Black American spaces and trying to what? Do the same thing that they did to the NAACP, demonize, telling us that we are xenophobic, telling us that we are hateful to other groups, when all we are doing is protecting our lineage and making sure that it is respected, okay? You guys can't go around just saying disparaging things, discrediting our ancestors without us standing up and saying that you cannot do that. That's all. Everything else is all gravy. We're going to do us. We're going to figure out what we got to figure out. But like I said, if you don't see the play, you wouldn't understand that this has been happening for a long time, right?
Williams started recruiting, not from the middle-class teachers and preachers who typically led NAACP chapters. He went to the factories, the farms, the unemployed men standing on corners. Most importantly, he went to the veterans, men who'd seen combat, who'd been trained to fight, who'd tasted just enough equality in uniform to make segregation unbearable.
All right, so look, this is important. This is important, and this is why a lot of times when we saw what's been happening lately with the Black Lions, right? The Black Lions who wanted to be the fake Panthers, we saw the recruitment wasn't there. This is what we talked about when it was real recruitment, okay? Like they spoke on, former veterans and people who have saw combat. There was a specific outplay for Robert to go out and seek those types of people, because he understood in order for us to be able to defend ourselves and protect our community, we need to make sure that we are recruiting people who are the real deal, who have tactical skills, who have military training, so that we can meet them at the same level, if not one up over them, right? And that's why it's funny, because there's all these similarities that a lot of people talk about, but this is something that they forget about the people who were fighting the good fight during the civil rights movement, was a lot of them were real dudes, okay? Real military trained tactical men who are not afraid of white Americans, who are not afraid of combat, all right? That was a specific archetype that we have in our community, okay? And we still have it till today, all right? I always tell you guys all the time that I come from a specific family of military men and police department background, all right? So in my family, it is natural for us to be in that position of protector, and as well, we are those who get it in the mud, all right? That's just where I come from, okay? I come from that type of family. I come from that specific side of military training. So when I saw the Black Lions, right, in Paul Bird's song, I can look at him in his face and tell that he was not built for combat. I can look at him and tell that he was not a veteran. I can look at him and tell that he was an agent, okay? These people were not who they say they were, all right? What we're talking about with Robert F. Williams, his specific goal was to find men who were veterans, military trained, and had saw combat, a lot of them coming back from the World War II, okay? They knew what was up. They wasn't messing around.
When they came home, men like Dr. Albert Perry. Dr. Albert E. Perry was everything Monroe's white establishment wanted to deny could exist. A black man with a medical degree, a veteran, a practicing physician at the local hospital. He bought a nice brick house, drove a decent car, and had the audacity to act like he deserved respect.
All right, listen. Now, this is as well the archetype that I like to always talk about. Foundational Black American men, when we are the apex of masculinity, when we are the apex of success, that is the specific draw of why white American men have such a problem with us as foundational Black American men, right? We don't come from a subservient mentality like a lot of the others who come here and want to assimilate into white America. Black American men come from a specific side where we are the opposite towards the enemy, meaning we stand up against the white supremacist archetype and structure. We do not assimilate to their culture. We educated ourselves. We picked ourselves up. We were the ones who were the true veterans and actually the real patriots of this country. And that pissed them off, okay? Because a lot of them brothers came back from the war and they expected us to not be able to survive, okay? This is all facts. If you think about the Buffalo Soldiers, if we can continue to Tuskegee, we can keep going, all right? We were not supposed to survive in their eyes. So once they saw that the foundational Black American soldiers were out here surviving and fighting hard, taking things to the next level, right? Hey, Rihanna, how you doing? Welcome, love you, salute. They could tell that the archetype was different. They understood that when you're dealing with foundational Black American soldiers and veterans, like they just mentioned, a doctor who is a medically trained doctor gets his doctorate and he's as well doing much better than a lot of these white American men who are living in these country towns, you already know what's going to happen. The jealousy is real. This is not something that we just make up. This is the archetype that a lot of Black American men have direct lineage towards, okay? I come from a very strong lineage of Black American men who have never, in any sense of the word, made themselves subservient to anyone other than the Most High God above, okay? You could have called them cocky. You could call them arrogant. You could call them full of themselves. It didn't matter. The lineage that I came from is the lineage that I came from. I didn't grow up being told to leave my head down when I see white folks. I was told to walk with my head high, my shoulders back, and being proud of who I am as a Black American man. I didn't grow up with an identity of who I am. I knew exactly who I was because my father and his father and his father before him came from this specific lineage where it was trained, it was tight, and it was an understanding that we ain't taking no shit off nobody. You better come correct or we're going to slap you in your mouth. And that's a fact.
Williams made him vice president of the Monroe NAACP. Together, they set about picking fights the previous leadership would never have dared to start. Their first victory came quiet. In 1956, they integrated the public library. White Monroe barely noticed because White Monroe barely used the library. But
all right, so here we go again, right? The myth of Black Americans not knowing how to read and write. I saw some idiot on some stupid panel try to say that Black Americans didn't know how to read 100 years ago. I almost lost my mind because this is what happens when people don't read. This is what happens when people don't study history. This is what happens when people don't understand how far foundational Black Americans have come. Okay? In 1956, he just said they took over the public library in Monroe, North Carolina, and the white folks didn't even know because white folks wasn't even going to the library. Come on, man. Black literacy is another level. They try to take that away from us, but they understand the literacy of Black Americans cannot be denied. All right. I grew up reading books, so many books, man. People used to get made fun of in school if you didn't know how to read, where I come from, and that's just a fact.
Williams and Perry noticed. They'd proven that pressure worked, that the system could be moved, so they picked a target that mattered more, the swimming pool. In the summer of 1957, 2 Black children drowned in a creek. There was nowhere else for them to swim. Monroe's public pool, built with federal tax dollars that Black families paid just like white families, was reserved exclusively for white residents. Black children had to make do with unsupervised creeks, muddy rivers, and the consequences that came with them.
Listen, man, we always talk about the plight and how hard things were and how different things were for foundational Black Americans. They had to swim in creeks, risking their lives, children dying to be able to enjoy just some semblance of a good time. Meanwhile, they see the white Americans swimming in a public pool that they paid for as tax-paying Americans, okay? And they can't use the facilities. Now, listen, this is what I also talk about when I speak about the sacrifices and the dedication that a lot of foundational Black Americans make to this country, the money that we pay in taxes, all right? The money that I'm gonna have to pay in taxes because I run my own business and they up my, you know what, every single tax season, right? The stuff that we have to pay out of pocket. They disrespect us and never, ever return that back into our communities. And that's why we have a problem with what's going on right now. And I'm gonna always speak on that because foundational Black Americans are tax-paying citizens, okay? We are not immigrants. We have to pay into this crap. So when we see the country becoming the country that we're living in and under, you dang right, we're gonna have a say in this and we're gonna speak on it. We're not like everybody else who's just okay with everything else to try to get by and assimilate to everybody else. No, bro. We got to speak, and we got to speak on it because we're tax-paying citizens, and we deserve to get the same things that everybody else is getting out of this country, if not more, because like we always talk about, we were the ones who built this country. We deserve our reparations, and that's facts.
2 children went under and didn't come up. Their names were lost to history, but their deaths sparked something that wouldn't be forgotten. Williams went to the city council with a reasonable request. Open the pool to Black children 1 day a week, just 1 day. The council's response was a masterclass in creative racism. Draining and refilling the pool after Black people used it, they explained with straight faces, would simply be too expensive. Segregation, they suggested, was an economic necessity.
Look at that picture, man. Look at this picture. Look at the cops holding back the Black brother while the white man slap him in his face. All right, this wasn't that long ago, man. And y'all want to talk about what be happening in our country and why we speak the way we speak? Because this is what be happening. This was what was going on. This wasn't that long ago, y'all. So don't y'all come on here trying to talk about and trying to say disparaging things about Black Americans and the things that we speak on when this was still happening. The brother getting escorted, but look at all these white folks surrounding him, getting slapped in the face while the police is holding him and not holding back the white man over here committing assault. All right?
Williams had a different analysis. Standing before the council, he delivered a line that cut through Monroe's polite racism like a...
Salute to Rihanna. She said, draining the pool is insane when Black Americans literally had to teach them how to bathe. Facts. And let's keep it real. They also try to put off the myth that Black Americans didn't know how to swim. And that's still a big myth in our community. And the fact that why a lot of Black Americans don't go out to learn how to swim. It all goes back to a lot of deep-rooted issues and a lot of deep-rooted racism that they put onto us when it comes to swimming and pools and bodies of water. All right? We already know what they did with Lake Lanier. Okay? They drowned entire cities of Black Americans, foundational Black American cities getting drowned out. All right? Same thing happened as well in Central Park in New York. Everybody knows this. Central Park was built on a foundational Black American town. That entire lake, everything that they did, the redevelopment was all part of a Black American town that got built over. The ancestors will forever be laid in that park.
Blade. Segregation, he said, is a luxury that Monroe cannot afford. He organized picket lines. 8 people at first, standing at the pool gates, silent, peaceful, exactly the kind of protest that Martin Luther King Jr. was preaching across the South. And Monroe responded the way Monroe always responded, with violence. Shots rang out at the picket lines. No one was arrested. Law enforcement officers stood by and watched. The message was clear. You can protest all you want, but when the bullets fly, you're on your own.
Yeah, man, and this is why even when we talk about the ICE raids, like I just mentioned, the ICE raids do not come from us just saying we're just going to stay out of this. No, this is a part of us understanding history and how for generations the white establishment has used protests to be able to mask what they really want to do to you, which is kill you. All right, like he said, they said you guys can picket, but if the bullets fly, you're on your own. We know that's exactly what's going to happen once Black Americans go out there and start protesting with these people. They are going to turn up every single resource that is available to them to start laying down Black folks right there in the middle of the street in them protests. We already know they're ready to let go of martial law. They are ready and willing to use the National Guard if they have to against Black American bodies. And that's why Black Americans are sitting this out. They are not participating in these protests because we just showed you here, right here, the history of this. This has been happening for generations. They cannot wait for us to go out there so they can use their lethal force on Black American bodies, man. We already know what's going to happen when we get out there.
That's when the Ku Klux Klan got involved. The Klan in Monroe wasn't some fringe element hiding in the shadows. In a town of 12,000 people, the press estimated 7,500 Klan members and supporters, more than half the town.
More than half the town. More than half the town were KKK members. Like I mentioned, guys, the town is only 12,000 people. 7,500 of those 12,000 were KKK members. When we talk about surrounded by racists, okay? Over 50% of the population in Monroe were KKK members. 12,000 people in a town and 7,500 of those 12,000 are KKK members. That's insane numbers, guys. This is what the circumstances were for a lot of foundational Black Americans right here in America. So when y'all try to say and discredit our plight and what we went through, I will always go back to the facts. The facts will always be the facts. I don't care what you have to say. These are the facts. All right. This is just one town. Imagine in the deep South. Okay. Imagine in the deep South how crazy it was, man.
They held massive rallies where thousands gathered in their robes and hoods, listening to speakers promise to keep Monroe pure, to keep the races separate, to handle these uppity agitators who thought they deserved to swim in white water. Leading these rallies was James William Catfish Cole, a South Carolina Klan organizer who'd made Monroe his personal project. Cole was the Klan's regional heavyweight, a man who commanded respect in white supremacist circles, someone who got things done, He held rallies where he specifically named Williams and Perry, calling them communists, troublemakers, threats to the Southern way of life. Then his followers would pile into their cars and form motorcades. Here's where the institutional betrayal became impossible to ignore. Monroe's police chief, A.A. Morney, didn't try to stop these motorcades.
Listen, this is why they say that some people that burn crosses are the same that run forces, all right? This is what Zach De La Rocha was saying in his songs, okay? This is the history that he was speaking on, is the fact that a lot of the KKK members took off those hoods and they put on a badge. A lot of those KKK members took off a hood and they put on that black cloak to be a judge. Some of them took off hoods and put on suits and ties and started to become lawyers and prosecutors for these systems. Some of them took off those hoods and they put on the specific uniforms for these unions. Okay? A lot of these KKK members were integral in the entire community of these towns. All right? We already talked about more than half of the town was already KKK members. Do you think that they were going around wearing those hoods all the time? No. They were regular working folks who had businesses, who were police officers, who were running farms, all types of stuff. And we, as foundational Black Americans, had to deal with these people every single day. And that's why when I talk about Rage Against the Machine in that lyric, some of those who burn crosses are the same who run forces. Yes, many of forces, the FBI, CIA, the police department, local, federal, all were integral in protecting and insulating the KKK to terrorize foundational Black American communities. All right? It's all part of a system. And I always get on here and I make sure that I show the receipts, because y'all be trying to act like y'all don't know what's going on. And every single time, all I do is bring the receipts. It's here. Y'all got to stop being dumb and acting like it's not there. It's in your face.
He led them. Squad cars with flashing lights would escort 50, sometimes more, Klan vehicles through Monroe's streets. The procession would wind through town, then head across the railroad tracks into Newtown, the black section, and there they'd drive past specific houses, firing guns into windows, throwing bottles, shouting threats, while the police chief made sure they had safe passage.
Listen, man, this was during segregated times. They're going over into the Black towns to terrorize the Black American community, and the police chief is allowing them to do it, okay? This is why when we said segregation, even when we were building our own towns, even when we had our own things going on, they would still find a way to come over and bother us and disrupt our peace. These people cannot leave us alone. They are obsessed with Black Americans.
Dr. Perry's house became a favorite target. Night after night, the motorcade would roll past and gunfire would erupt. Perry, his wife, his children, huddling inside while bullets punched through walls.
So remember how they always talked about that Black Americans are always running drive-bys? They're always running drive-bys. They are the original drive-by shooters. They are the original drive-by shooters, y'all. Will you guys wake up and understand that everything they say to us is just a mirror? They are only talking about things that they partook in. They are the original drive-by shooters. They would literally go over to Black American towns and shoot up people's houses, children, people living in there. They are the original drive-by shooters, y'all. What is we talking about, man?
He'd call the police. They'd tell him they couldn't confirm any shooting had occurred, despite the holes in his house and the shell casings in his yard. Then they'd suggest perhaps he'd be safer if he stopped causing trouble. Williams made a decision that would define his life and split the civil rights movement. If the law wouldn't protect black people would protect themselves. He applied for a charter from the National Rifle Association. The NRA approved it without hesitation. Williams formed what he called the Black Armed Guard, though officially it was the Monroe chapter of the NRA. 50 to 60 men, most of them veterans like Williams, men who knew how to handle weapons, how to maintain discipline under fire, how to return fire effectively.
Now listen, this is what I talk about when I talk about specific training and tactical understanding, right? That is the difference. We saw those black lions get out here out of shape, talking crazy. Nobody has ever seen any training, any understanding of any militarization of what they were doing. They were just out there talking crazy with no backing. These guys were for real, all right? Robert was a real dude, real veteran, really out here training to make sure if it went down, they was ready for whatever.
Trained, they drilled, they bought guns with money raised from supporters, including fundraisers in Harlem, where Malcolm X would later invite Williams to speak at his mosque. They studied tactics, and they prepared Dr. Perry's house like it was a forward operating base. By October 1957, tensions in Monroe had reached a breaking point. The Klan's motorcades continued, increasingly brazen. White Monroe had circulated petitions to have Williams and Perry driven from town.
Listen, man, the original drive-by shooters, I'm telling y'all, these was the original drive-by shooters, okay? They over there terrorizing them, so they had to set up shop and create a defense against these KKK motorcades that were coming into the black side of town in segregated Monroe, North Carolina. They are just using this as a response. They are protecting their side of the street. These people, the KKK, are the original drive-by shooters going by their homes, shooting up their homes. They are responding by saying we have to protect ourselves.
Anonymous death threats arrived daily. Williams' insurance company cancelled his coverage, citing the risk. When he asked the police chief why his insurance was cancelled if there was no danger, the chief had no answer. On October 5th, 1957, the Klan decided to make their point permanent. They were going to Dr. Perry's house, and this time they weren't just going to shoot at it. They were going to burn it down with everyone inside.
All right, so think of the malicious mind of a straight up savage group making plans to assassinate you in your own home, okay? For no other reason other than standing up for yourself and protecting your people on your segregated side of town. You are not allowing them to continue to terrorize your community, and now they want to kill you for it, all right? This was the mindset of these people, and it's still the mindset that they have today, all right?
Williams got word through the Black Communities Network. People who worked in white homes, who overheard conversations, who understood that information meant survival. The Klan was coming, in force. Tonight, Williams and his men moved into Perry's house that afternoon. They stacked sandbags along the windows. They positioned men with clear fields of fire. They made sure everyone understood the plan. No one fires first, but when they do fire, we fire back. Aim low, disable. Don't kill if possible. Make it clear we're serious without giving them martyrs. As the sun set, they waited. Perry's family had been moved to safety. Inside the house were only men who'd made peace with what might happen next.
Now listen, this is what I tell you. You don't need a lot of people. You only need a specific few who are willing to go the distance that's necessary to prove the point. All right? I'm very different in this specific way where I know there's going to be a lot of people who are not going to understand what is necessary to be able to make our point felt. So you only need a specific few who are willing to go there. And Robert had that. He had that with his brothers in arms who have been training and who are ready for whatever was going to happen. Like he said, made their peace with it, got their families out of Dodge and said, all right, we about to run up on this KKK and it's about to go down. It is what it is. And that's what it is, man. These people were willing to die for what they believed in. And that's why we try to tell people, foundational Black Americans, we built different. We're not like everybody else. We come from a specific lineage that was not afraid to go against what needed to go against to make the presence felt. Like, we wasn't afraid of that, man. We gonna do whatever it takes. Okay, let's get it.
Veterans who'd survived war only to find themselves at war in their own hometown.
That part.
Men who'd sworn oaths to defend their country and were now defending their community from their neighbors. The sound reached them first. Engines. Lots of engines. Then the glow of headlights. Dozens of them, winding through Monroe's streets. The motorcade rolled past City Hall, past the courthouse, past the nice white neighborhoods where people watched from their porches like it was a parade. Then it crossed the tracks into Newtown, 50 cars or more, packed with Klan members in full regalia.
50 cars or more, okay? A motorcade coming for a small faction of men in one house. A few Black American men, and they had over 50 Klan members, all right? Crazy. But this is what it is. It's the same, even if you think about, if you see a brother getting pulled over on the side of the street, what happened? One police car turned into 8 police cars just to give him one ticket, all right? This is the same energy, okay? They're going to bring the whole reinforcements just for 3 foundational Black American men, all right, who was ready for war.
At the front, Monroe Police Chief Morney's squad car, lights flashing. The motorcade snaked through Newtown streets, and residents who'd seen this before pulled their children inside, turned off their lights, prayed this night wouldn't be the night someone they loved got killed. The procession turned onto Perry Street. The cars slowed, then stopped, engines idling. Men began to emerge, white robes gleaming in the headlights. Some carried torches, some the other fired first. What's certain is that gunfire erupted from the Klan's motorcade, slamming into Perry's house. Bullets shattered windows, punched through the brick, tore through the front door.
The original drive-by shooters, okay? When they would always talk about Black Americans, oh, y'all drive-by shooters. No, that was y'all. You guys were the original drive-by shooters. The KKK with motorcades driving past many of foundational Black American homes over generations of time, terrorizing and killing anyone in sight. The original drive-by shooters, okay? The original drive-by shooters right here. These were your original drive-by shooters. These were the people who were terrorizing the community. These were the people who were riding through with hoods on, doing what they do, what they know best. We all know what they do best, okay? Yeah.
The roar was deafening, dozens of weapons firing at once. Inside the house, Williams gave the order. Fire! The response was disciplined, controlled, exactly what you'd expect from trained soldiers. Muzzle flashes erupted from Perry's windows. The veterans inside had positioned themselves for overlapping fields of fire. They aimed low, at car tires, at legs, at anything that wasn't lethal but would make their point crystal clear. The Klan had never experienced this. In all their years of terrorizing Black neighborhoods, shooting into homes, burning crosses, inflicting violence with impunity, they'd never faced organized armed resistance.
Now listen, it has always been very, very clear that the reason why foundational Black American soldiers were the ones who saved a lot of white American soldiers was because our ideology. We were the ones who were thinking of ideas and ways that were tactically driven plans to make sure that we didn't just go straight at our opponents. We would come from different angles. We were choosing how to attack in different ways. We were changing the way that you would actually attack an actual enemy. We were the ones who innovated a lot of those tactics within the war. You can look this up. It's all in the history books, okay? So when you think about the very, very old indigenous Apache soldiers who were out there using tactics that the American soldiers took from to what? To win the war, that was the same tactical ideology that a lot of foundational Black American soldiers brought to these fights against these, like I said, country bumpkins who never even went to war, who never even knew how to use a gun for real, okay? Who are not trained in a military tactical way like Robert F. Williams and his constituents of the NAACP and his gun club that he established, right?
The psychological impact was immediate and total. These weren't victims cowering in the dark. These were soldiers returning fire. The Klan panicked. Men in white robes scrambled back to their cars. Engines roared to life. Tires squealed. The entire motorcade broke formation and fled in every direction.
Listen, man, this is what we do, all right? We don't run. We don't run, all right? We're going to stand 10 toes down and do what we got to do in the face of adversity. We don't run. That is not in our DNA. We are not built like this. That is why foundational Black Americans always make it clear. We are not runners, okay? We stand 10 toes down and we going to get it out the mud. Whoever wants smoke, we gonna meet it with smoke. And that's why there's a lot of talk, man, a lot of talk, man, about foundational Black Americans and us not being outside and all this other stuff. Listen, man, we've already proven through historical documentation that we are willing to do whatever it takes. And not only that, we are not afraid to train and to organize in a tactical way that will always protect ourselves against enemies, foreign and domestic.
Some cars running into each other in their desperation to escape. Within minutes, the street was empty except for abandoned robes, dropped torches, and the fading sound of engines racing back across the tracks to the safety of white Monroe. Inside Perry's house, Williams and his men held their positions. No pursuit, no celebration. They maintained their perimeter through the night, knowing retaliation might come. But it didn't. The Klan had been routed, humiliated, driven from a Black neighborhood by Black men with guns. The next morning, Monroe's city council held an emergency session. The same council that had said they couldn't afford to let Black children swim. The same council that had turned a blind eye to months of Klan terrorism. They passed an ordinance effective immediately. The Ku Klux Klan was banned from Monroe without a special permit from the police chief. That ordinance was the first crack in Monroe's wall of white supremacy.
And this is why I always speak about why it's so important for us to speak about the history of activism and civil rights within the foundational Black American space, because it always backs up exactly where we come from. When we fight, when we stand up, things have to change, and we forced it, okay? Like he said, there had to change. They had to outlaw the KKK from this town, because if they did not, they knew that a lot of them would get laid down. 7,500 of this town with a 12,000 people population, okay? That's a lot of folks, all right? They didn't want to take that loss because we already know white population numbers, they've always been the actual minority. So if those numbers dwindle and they already seen that the foundational Black American community is growing, naturally, they can't have that happen where, y'all running into these tactical, military veterans, you know what I'm saying? And they know how to, use them guns, they know how to protect themselves. We can't just be running up in their towns because it's going to be bad for us. And that's what we do. You know what I'm saying? F around.
Not because the council suddenly developed a conscience. But because armed black veterans had demonstrated something white Monroe couldn't afford to ignore. In William's own words, racists consider themselves superior beings and are not willing to exchange their superior lives for our inferior ones. They are most vicious and violent when they can practice violence with impunity. The shootout barely made the news. The Monroe Journal mentioned it briefly. 3 black newspapers covered it. The national press ignored it completely. Just 3 months later, when the Lumbee tribe would rout the Klan in a similar confrontation, national media would descend on North Carolina, Life magazine would run photo spreads, politicians would issue statements. But when black men defended themselves with guns, white America decided that story was better left untold.
This is what happens, man. And I try to always, like I said, use my platform to bring awareness to stories and history that is important to the establishment of foundational Black Americans, okay? Robert F. Williams is an American hero, and he deserves to be honored during Black History Month because he was the one who chose to fight. He was the one who showed the tactical understanding. He was the one who inspired Malcolm X to have the ideology that he had moving into his civil rights movement and activism. A lot of people don't talk about Robert F. Williams because it is a very scary topic for them to talk about. Why? Because like he just mentioned, the stories about Black American men who used force and matched force with force, those stories will not be told because that empowers foundational Black American men to know our rights and to know our power. These men were the ones who were integral in the protection of our community and is also the standard for us to go from to protect our communities. Robert F. Williams is the standard, okay? When we look at any other American heroes, specifically foundational Black American heroes, Robert F. Williams is the creme de la creme. And that's why I had to make sure that I brought this story to you guys, because it's very important for me to use my platform to be able to raise awareness for these American heroes who are not talked about often. Okay? And it's also used to empower the brothers who know. All right? I can't say much because we're on YouTube. But all I'm going to say is this is the archetype of the foundational Black American men who inspire me. This is the archetype of the foundational Black American men who influenced me. These are the type of men who created the type of mentality and the ideology that I stem my energy from. Okay? Whatever you do in these spaces on YouTube, whoever channel that you patronize, all of us have a specific ideology and a viewpoint. When you come over here to Brandon B's channel and Elite Media, my viewpoint will always be standards. Standards start with what? Self-respect. It also starts with defense and self-defense. It also starts with knowledge of self and understanding. We will not allow any of you guys to disrespect our lineage and the way that we put in the work to continue to push the narrative forward. We will stay on code around here, man. Salute to FBA Strong 8815. Salute my brother. He says, salute channel greetings. I heard of him. He was a real one. I remember seeing several stories about Robert F. Williams. You know his character, my standard FBA lineage. Yes, sir. This is important. Robert F. Williams is an important key to our history. He is an important key to self-respect. He is an important key to as well holding up our ancestors, right? And speaking on their stories and their plight, making sure that we will always honor them, especially during Black History Month, especially during Black History Month. Because like I said, I can hop on here and talk about any of many of topics that's trending right now. I could really be doing that and be just like everybody else. But I'm choosing to make sure that I'm using Black History Month to talk about Black history and to speak on our heroes and people who have held up this for us since we got here and since we were put into captivity. All right? So sure, I could have talked about many of things today, but Robert F. Williams needs to be talked about because he is Black history. He is a foundational Black American hero. He is a war hero. He is a veteran. He is a patriot. And he is a Black leader. All right? Like I said, his lineage is certified. All right? This man is responsible for everything that Malcolm X, his whole ideology behind using force and matching force with force. It all started with brothers like this, Robert F. Williams. And I want to make sure that we never forget his legacy. And right here on Elite Media, I'm always going to speak on that. I will never allow you guys to forget our heroes and the people who paved the way for us. As much as all these other people try to make y'all forget it, we won't do that over here. That's why it is important for me to always speak on the history. It is important for me to always speak on those who have been forgotten, and as well, the history of our people, man. So salute to y'all, man. This was a great stream, man. I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I enjoy talking about Black history. It is very fun to me. I enjoy this shit. It's easy. You know what I'm saying? It's easy for me to bring these stories to y'all because I'm constantly in the lab using the resources of the internet that are available to us. Something comes across my timeline, I take a note of it. I tell myself, all right, man, we're going to talk about this. And like I said, whether it's trending or not, it's a lot of things I could have talked about today to put myself into the algorithm and all that stuff. But it's Black History Month. So we're going to talk about Black history. And we're going to talk specifically about foundational Black American history. Okay? That's what we doing over here. We going to make sure that we do that. And like I said, I'm going to try my best to get on here every day during Black History Month. I'm gonna really try. It's gonna be hard because like I said, I got my own business. I be working this shit, but I'm gonna really try my best to always bring you guys fresh, real stories about history and about our history. And then y'all do it what you do. Make sure y'all share it. Make sure you like it. Make sure you subscribe, man. Because we here, man. We putting up real numbers, man. Like I said, we just hit 650 subscribers. And I couldn't be more grateful for that, man. I can't even imagine 100 people liking my stuff, man. Y'all be showing love, and I appreciate it, man, because we doing what we can. You know what I'm saying? Straight up. Salute FBA Strong and back in the chat. He says he reminds me of Saigon Pen in Oakland, self-defense case. Tariq turned me on to that. Yes, sir. Hey, appreciate you pulling up, man. Even if you late, bro, it don't matter. You know what I'm saying? We just come in here. Like I said, I come in here. I bring these topics to y'all. I'll be impromptu. I probably could be better about promoting the times I'm going to go live. But sometimes it's very impromptu for me when I have the time. You know what I'm saying? So I try my best. But like I said, I got some videos dropping this week. So I'm working on some videos that's going to be dropping this week. So y'all be on the lookout for those. Also, like I said, I'm going to be trying to stream every single day during Black History Month. So y'all make sure y'all stay locked in and subscribe so that y'all can be locked in with your boy and interact with me. We can build on that. You know what I'm saying? So salute everybody out there. Like I said, this was a great stream. Rest in peace to the legend, Robert F. Williams, a true foundational Black American hero and war veteran. Salute to him. Thank you all for pulling up, man. My name is Elite. My name is Brandon B. This is Elite Media, man, and I'm out. Peace, y'all.